Hello everyone, my name is Astrid and I'm happy to welcome you to We Love Belgian Brands, the first podcast dedicated to Belgian fashion. With We Love Belgian Brands podcast, I'm interviewing different actors of these sectors and shows the many facets and creative richness that is sometimes unknown. Through these episodes, I want to meet people and listen to the stories behind the brands. Because the success is always more complex than a nice advertisement on Instagram posts. There are nice moments, but also difficulties. With this podcast, I would like to go to the heart of Belgian brands, to share business model, ask questions, and give a human approach. Mini disclaimer, I'm not perfectly bilingual. I'm from France. I've been living in Antwerp for 15 years now. With this podcast, I'll do my best to record episodes in Dutch and in French, the easiest for me. But when I also had the opportunity to interview someone in the language of Shakespeare, I can't say no. Passionate about fashion and the creative power of Belgium, I want to use my podcast to meet new people and chat together about these dynamic sectors. I wish you a lot of listening pleasure. Today, I have the pleasure of having Juraj Straka at my microphone. His background and talent impresses me. And through our discussion, I hope to introduce you to a job in the fashion industry that I feel is less well known. The job is textile designer. Juraj works today as a freelancer. He's based in Antwerp, but he was born in Slovakia. And then he worked for 10 years in France, in Lyon, where he worked for 7 years at Buko, in one of the last silk factories. Then he spent 3 years at Schiaparelli in Paris, before being recruited by Dries Van Noten for his dream job. After 4 years as head of men's and women's print at Dries Van Noten, Juraj didn't want to fall into routine and decided to take the leap. Daring to be an entrepreneur, to take on challenges, is clearly a subject that I like. So I'm delighted today to discuss this with him. Juraj, hello.
Hi Astrid, how are you doing?
Good. I always start my interviews with asking you a few words to present yourself and also what was your dream job when you were a kid?
So, as you already mentioned briefly, I come from Slovakia. I was born in Slovakia and raised, and I did all my studies in Slovakia. But I knew since very, very early age that I wanted to do something linked with fashion.
Cool.
I come from a family where a generation of my mom and my parents are the people who had to create the garments themselves because back in Czechoslovakia, back in those days, you couldn't just go and buy fancy things. So everybody was knitting and was sewing things at home. So I come from this background, which put me into textiles as from very early age.
Cool.
So I'm one of those lucky ones who did have very clear vision of what they wanted to do in their life. And I also had these amazing parents who were supporting this dream and giving to me and to my brother a full freedom of choice when it came to choosing our career. So my dream job to work in fashion one way or another was born in very, very early age.
That's great.
And I just followed it.
That's amazing. Wow. It gives me a lot of happiness to hear that and to have the parents who offer you the opportunity to follow your dreams. That's amazing. And so concretely, how did it work? Did you study?
Well, in Slovakia, we have a good school system in the sense of that if at age of 15 years, when you enroll there to high school, you know what you want to do, you can already choose very specific school.
Wow.
So at age of 15, I enrolled in a fashion design school.
Ah, wow.
Which led me to 4 years of experience in fashion, including the pattern making and all the technical stuff. But very quickly I realized that what was mesmerizing for me in fashion was not really the garment itself or the shape of the garment, because for me a pants will always just remain two tubes which are stitched together in the middle. I don't get the kick out of shape of the pants. But what I really always loved was what fabric is it made in? Is it embellished? Is it print? Is there embroidery? So after these 4 years of fashion design, I realized that actually that's not what I want to do. And I discovered that there is this job that also I never heard of before, a textile designer. So maybe we should start also defining a little bit what textile designer means, because I think that a lot of people will not even know what it means.
True.
So contrary to belief that fashion designers, they just go to a shop and buy fabrics and they do their collections from those fabrics, the reality is that somebody has to design these fabrics, either if it's for the brand on custom made or even for the supplier of the fabrics. There is the whole job of designing fabrics itself. And especially when it comes to prints, to printed fabrics, well, here it's obviously a job that someone has to design those prints. And basically, the job of a print designer reduces itself to create motifs in a very specific way with repetition. Because a print, if you want to print a fabric, the same motif, the same flower has to come at some point again in the fabric.
True.
So as you can then cut your dress and you always have a nice fabric, which is called a repeat, a repetition of a motif. And this makes the approach to this craft very specific, comparing to being a painter or comparing to being a graphic designer.
Definitely.
When usually you work in a composition which is limited by a frame or by a poster or by something, here you have to think of something that runs.
And there is also so many different kind of fabrics.
Exactly.
A painter has only canvas.
A canvas. But as a painter can play with different
True.
techniques, aquarelle,
of
acrylics
course.
or whatever, or going into 3D.
You also working with different techniques?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do most of my designs at some point by hand. There is always a hand touch in it. In the process, of course, today you have to go to digital at some point because all the fabrics are printed digitally. So you have to, at some point, bring the computer in the game. But doing a lot of things by hand, you really leave a piece of soul in what you do. I really believe that if you create from the start something in computer, there will always be a little distance between you and the work that you do. Whereas comparing to the process when you really get dirty and you paint with the things and your hand has this ability to create the imperfections. And I really love the beauty in imperfections. A line which is hand-drawn will have irregularities and certain small mistakes, which makes it really beautiful and keeps the soul in a design. Compared to a line that you will design on computer, which will be perfectly clean and sharp and smart.
Cool.
But at the end of the day, that design for me personally will look a little bit soulless.
Yeah, interesting. And what makes your job also very specific, I think, is also the fact that you know so much there is so much different kind of fabric. You're not making, or tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you cannot really make the same print if it's on velvet or if it's on silk or on cotton.
Exactly.
How do you define that?
A really great fabric, at the end, it's a fine-tuning 4 elements. So it's the print itself, the motif or the design, if you will. Then in which colorway is it printed? In which scale is it printed? And on which fabric is it printed? And by fine-tuning these 4 elements, you can achieve something really extraordinary.
Cool.
So I believe that there is nothing like an ugly print. I only believe that it's a print which hasn't been done in the right colorway or on the right scale or on the right fabric. So even if somebody comes with me with a finished print and I have to take over, and even though if I do not like the print personally, I know that there is always a possibility to make a good print out of it.
Cool.
By playing with it and fine-tuning and adjusting certain parts of it, you can always make something cool out of it.
That's great. And how did you learn your job?
Well, I was really lucky. During my studies, I enrolled in many competitions and internships and Erasmus and all these things. And I did take a part in a French competition, which was organized by Association of Silk Weavers in Lyon, and the few remaining weavers in Lyon. And I participated in this competition that I won. And the company who was printing my competition project did offer me a summer internship for 3 months.
Cool.
And this is how I came like Alice in Wonderland to the most beautiful company in the world, being completely mesmerized by the environment.
Machines and everything with the huge...
It was more the vibe of the studio with like rolls of fabric everywhere and colors everywhere. It was really like a kid in the candy shop.
How old were you?
I was 19 when I went the first time, and to make long story short, I started an internship for 3 months and I stayed for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And I started as an intern and I ended up being a head designer for our customers.
And during this experience, you were making prints, or you are making designs for the supplier himself or for his customers?
Well, both. I was responsible to do all the prints for the collection that the supplier proposed to the client. But at the same time, for all the projects which were including print, so all the brands from Yves Saint Laurent to Lanvin or you name it.
They arrive with their prints.
Not really with their prints, with the idea or a briefing or a mood board. It can be done in really a lot of different ways. And what was really the most beautiful experience of these 7 years was the diversity. Literally working one day for Chanel on an aquarelle rose, and then next day is doing some minimalistic thing for Dries Van Noten, or then an animal print next day for Yves Saint Laurent. That was really the best possible school. And I
Yeah.
would almost dare to say it should be mandatory for everybody who wants to work later in fashion itself on whatever point. Start at a supplier.
Of course.
If you are a
It's
print
amazing
designer, start
experience.
at a fabric designer. If you work in the designing of garments, first work in the manufacturer of garments.
Yeah.
Because the craft and the knowledge of how the things work
Wow.
is something super important. Because it's one thing is to have a vision or make a sketch, but if you then don't know how to bring this into life, it's a bit useless.
True.
So knowing the limits and knowing where to push the limits and knowing where to stop sometimes is really helpful, because it makes your job and then the job of everybody else in the process much easier.
Of course. And thanks to this experience, you managed to go to the designer team of a fashion French house.
Yeah, I was.
I mean, not French. In fact, Schiaparelli is.
Well, she was Italian, but
Yeah.
the Maison Haute Couture is officially Parisian.
Yeah.
So we can talk about French or
Ouais.
Parisian. Yeah, I was then for 3 years a head designer of prints and embroideries for Schiaparelli in Haute Couture in Paris, which was a really lovely experience. Mostly because in couture, you really can work on the most crazy developments.
Oh, yeah.
And we are talking budget-wise. When you talk
And luxury
especially
fabrics.
luxury fabrics and
Of course.
especially embroidery. Because embroidery, since it's really counted on human hours of work, it's a very pricey technique. So being able to do a full dress, which is fully covered in hand embroidery, we are talking like thousands euros of work. Of course, only haute couture does have the budget to do these crazy projects. So
wow.
I had this platform where I could design the most beautiful embroideries that has been done by Atelier Les Sages, which is a French-based, most known embroidery house, and to make garments which then were on red carpets or worn by celebrities. It was really, really nice experience.
I can imagine. And from Schiaparelli to Antwerp, what happened?
Well, to work for Dries Van Noten was always my dream job.
He's the most, I mean, really worldwide, I think he's the most print brand known in the world, and is really known for this really rich and specific print. So obviously...
Yeah. So if you would have met me like many years ago and you would ask me, what is your dream job? I would reply, I want to be print designer for Dries Van Noten.
Wow.
So when then I found out that they were changing their team and they were looking for someone, like for me, it was, I did not even think, I just grabbed my phone and I called and I was like, I want this job. And then I realized like, wait, you have a job and you live in Paris and you have your whole life constructed here. But it was so much stronger than me that I did not think about these things.
It was meant to be. You had to apply.
I had to have that job and then I had to adapt my life around it. Cool. And I'm very happy that I did.
Cool. And so you worked for how long, Dries Van Noten?
I spent most beautiful 4 years working with and for Dries, both on men's and women's collection. And it was, as I said, the nicest professional experience that I've ever had.
That's great. And even if you were so happy and so, absolutely on your talented zone of expertise in the most beautiful brand, you decided to take the leap. Why? How?
From the previous experiences, I already knew that after 4 or 5 years in any job, basically, I don't think it's just linked to my creative part job. I think everybody does feel it. After those 4 years, 5 years, you can fall in the routine. And, you've been there, done that. You discovered a little bit the limits of the company. And I did not want to go that far, and I did not want this routine jeopardize the nice experience I had there. So
you wanted to leave the party at the right time.
And I also started to have this ambition in my head that, it's really cool to work for someone you admire so much. But I started to want to have a little bit more freedom in the sense of being able to work for different clients at the same time. Because it's really nice to be full-time at one brand, because then you really know the aesthetics and you know where to go. But now, today, working with so many different clients and on so many different projects, I found the really full core of the joy again.
Cool.
And also the variety of the jobs. So you don't feel like the routine is not on my table, definitely.
Could you tell us more about this variety, diversity?
Yeah,
and where could we find you?
So my company is called Textile Studio JS. You can check my Instagram, of course, to show a little bit, to see a little bit all the collaborations that I'm doing now. What I do is my core of my work is still to design prints for fabric. So I work with a multitude of brands, either local ones like from Nathan to Essentiel with Mary Leroy, Catherine Tays, Unrun. But next to that, I also work internationally for designers like Jason Wu in New
Cool.
York and others. But I have now the beautiful occasions to also step out a little bit of my comfort zone as a textile designer and put on the hat of a surface designer, which is quite also unknown term. We don't hear
True.
that very often. It's quite recent, the label, the surface designer, but it basically covers
Very wide,
someone
very
who,
large.
because the pattern or the motif or ornaments, you need them on so many products, from your mug to a facade of a building to a packaging on cosmetics. Like the design can be used really everywhere. So today I have this platform where I'm having beautiful projects, like I did illustrations for the packaging of Meurice Belgian chocolates.
Cool.
I just did a huge collection of wallpapers for a New York interior designer.
Wow.
I just did recently a collaboration with Skoda car, where I get a chance to design for the full car from outside, not interior, but it was
Not
really
interior,
a car
okay.
which was fully printed in a design.
So
wow. This is really what I was seeking for when I took the decision to leave.
Yeah, it opens so many doors, of course.
And every time that you do a new project like that, you discover new limits, which are always very inspiring. Like I did a collection of designs for porcelain. And due to that project, I got to go to Portugal and go in the factories and discover the whole process of manufacturing of porcelain, which is so enriching and it gives you so much inspiration also for other projects.
Cool.
So now I'm really focusing on opening a little bit the door, and not use the label just textile designer.
Okay, interesting.
But to be more as a surface designer and going into interiors and design and basically wherever a design is needed.
There is no limit to you.
The sky is the limit in textile design.
Is the limit. Your talent can be everywhere. That's really, really cool. So we're talking on this podcast about Belgian brands and Belgian fashion. What is for you Belgian fashion?
Well, when I moved to Belgium and I started to discover Belgian fashion, because to speak frankly, I did not know that much the local scene before. Living in France, you don't hear that much about Belgian fashion besides the big Belgian names. And how I would describe it from my point of view is eclectic. I really love the diversity of the styles of the brands. I went even to see a couple of those fashion shows at the Academy that they do at the end of the year.
Of course.
And I love how the creativity is being pushed to almost an extreme there, and how the unique styles of everybody are being supported.
Yeah, stimulated.
And not molding them into the minimalism that we see on so many brands, or like trying to avoid the full-on commercial part of the fashion and be like, no, you are still young, please be wild, be crazy, be creative, be crazy. You can always tone it down, but it's more difficult to tone. It's easier to tone down your creativity than starting with something where you don't know where to go anymore and how to pimp it up.
True. And would you define today your activity or your small firm as a Belgian company?
Look, Frank, no, not really. I don't feel like just because I'm physically being in Belgium to be a Belgian company.
No, it's true.
I'm not from Belgium. I do have a big portfolio of clients who are literally around the world.
Yeah.
So no, I'm really working on an international level. I love living in Antwerp. I love living in Belgium. I would not label my brand Belgium. And I also now finally, after all these years, after 15 years living abroad and working abroad, I finally also can work a lot at home in Slovakia. Which is very important, because until now I was always exclusive to a brand, so I could not have other projects. And I always wanted to go back home. Not to move back home to Slovakia, I think I could not anymore.
Okay.
But I find it very important that when people do leave their country and work abroad, that you come back at some point and you give something back to your society also.
It's nice of you to say so.
And in Slovakia, there is so many talented people who are forced to leave the country because there is no platform for them to do what they want to do, because like fashion is still almost non-existing. But if everybody then leaves, the country is like being washed out of talents and of brains. So I'm a strong believer in, go abroad, get the best jobs you can, grow, but come back one way or another to bring it back.
And what could you do concretely? Sure.
I work for local brands.
Okay.
And now I try to help a couple of brands who are there. Fashion brands. I pick every season young students with whom I collaborate.
From Slovakia?
From Slovakia.
Ah, cool.
But also, I was just discussing last week when I was in Slovakia with my alma mater, with my school, to see how I could go back and do a workshop or to do some teaching.
Or some online classes, huh? I think the day of
I would
today.
really want to do a physical one.
Why?
Because the textile, it's so physical and so about explaining the materials and stuff. Of course, there could be a part of teaching that could be done online. But I'm just like dreaming of giving a workshop that I would have loved to when I was a student to have.
That's a great
So I have this concept in my mind, and it's just a matter of time before I really put it in action.
That's really cool. Thank you very much. I love hearing that. If people want to find you or your Instagram page, as you say.
Yeah, Textile Studio JS, and through Instagram is the easiest way how to get in touch.
And give us some explanation maybe. How do we work with you? Do we arrive with a request as a brand? Do we arrive with a request? Do we go into your collection? What do you...
So how I do basically today is that I'm putting all my time and effort into creating a collection of prints.
Which is your collection.
Which is my collection. And by collection, I mean it's different prints shown on fabric, because of course showing a textile design on a paper, it's a bit useless. So I pre-develop fabrics, printed fabric.
And choose which kind of fabric you...
And I also then choose, because some designs will work better on a transparent chiffon and some will be nice on a matte or a jacquard. So I do this collection of propositions, and the client can then consult the whole collection and see the designs. And all these designs are then sold in a full exclusivity to the brand, which is nowadays a very important thing, because if you have a fashion brand and you want to use a print, you want to be also sure that it's your unique print that underlines your aesthetics, your brand, and to be sure that you don't see the same print at a different brand.
And so people are buying the print and then they do whatever they want with it.
I sell my designs in full exclusivity for worldwide territory without time limitations. You have some suppliers or designers who will sell the license for a season, a year, 5 years. It really depends. I prefer to really sell the design, and then the client has a full possession on the design, and as you say, then can they exploit it however they want. They can use it in one collection, but if they want, they can use it forever as their lining. I mean, everybody has very different needs, but I prefer for them to also know that, no, this now really belongs to you, and you can then work with it as much as you want.
And it's true, with the print, you can do so many things, and you can have it for another season.
Yeah, I mean, we see it. The big brands, they have their emblematic prints that they change colors every season, and it becomes really a landmark, a stamp almost. So there is more and more of brands who do take the investment into developing or making one print on their own, and then they often reuse it for different collections, and it helps them to build an image of a brand which is then more easier recognizable for a customer.
Super cool. Thank you so much. Very interesting. There are some people in the fashion industry, in the Belgian fashion industry, that you find very inspiring and where you would like to listen to them.
Well, as I said, I'm really mesmerized by the creativity of the smaller and younger brands here. So the designers like Meryl Roch or Catherine Tays, I think definitely those are the ones to keep an eye on. And I think this would be really great guests also for your podcast.
I would love to have them on my microphone. That's a good idea. I will contact them. Thank you very much,
Thank you, Astrid.
Do you want to add something? Would you like to?
Well, just to thank you for my first podcast ever. Thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to these episodes until the end. I hope you enjoyed it. And if so, I invite you to share it and rate it with 5 stars. It will help me a lot to gain more visibility. And if you have people or projects to introduce to me, or you have any question, don't hesitate to find me on my Instagram page with_love_Belgian_.